seeds with good medicine and so forth, you can, keep most people alive who have been injured. Maybe a tenth. Only a tenth will die from casualty. 269. 269. Got that? Whoa! That's impressive. The British. Were there some colonials that lost their lives? Sure. But did the British get their objective? Did they get all the stuff? No. So where do they go back to? They go back to Boston. Right? This is April 1775. Word gets up and down the colonies. War has begun. What is going to happen now? Maybe we should get together for another Continental Congress. This is you guys. This is the Second Continental Congress. This is the one we're going to be doing in here. All of you guys are delegates as part of your state's delegate, your colony's delegation to the Second Continental Congress. Bless you. They're going back to Philadelphia. Okay? The Second Continental Congress is going to start May 10th, 1775, and will continue on through 1776 and into the early stages of the independence. One of the first things they do as they gather in Philadelphia, and the folks from Massachusetts are going, war has begun. The British are coming out. They're trying to take our guns. They're doing this and this and this and this. What do we need to do? We need to arm ourselves. We need to form a military. Write it down. They agree. They're going to form a national army. Oh my gosh. They vote to form a Continental Army. And they vote to have one of them, one of the delegates, it turns out it's a delegate from Virginia. Who are our delegates from Virginia here? Raise your hand if you're a delegate from Virginia. Who are you? Who are you? Is it going to be either Lee or Jefferson who is going to be chosen as the commander of the Continental Army? Nope, neither one of you. Who is going to be chosen as the commander of the Continental Army? He's right there. He's the tall guy. He looks quite familiar. Write it down. George Washington. Woo! Did he have some military experience? He did. He was a leader of the colonial militia during the French and Indian War. Okay, so he's got some military experience. Although if you actually look at his military experience, it wasn't like, woohoo, he won all the time. And the British are like, oh my gosh, you're just awesome. You should join the British military. If they had given him much respect, maybe and offered him a position, he might have been in the British military. But guess what? He wasn't in the British military. He's just been chosen by the Second Continental Army to be the commander. Just watching? Okay. To be the commander. He takes that position. It's not an easy position. That is one of the messages. Write this down. It is going to be a really, really hard job. And in fact, truth be told, most of the battles that George Washington is involved in, his side loses. And sometimes the best thing that comes out of a battle that he's involved in is he survives and he's able to retreat with enough of his forces to continue fighting another day. It is not going to be an easy thing for him. And in fact, think of this. We got George Washington, 6'3". Where are they going to send him? Where is there the most likelihood of engaging in fights with the British military? Massachusetts. They send him up to Massachusetts. And in fact, you can go visit in Boston someday in your life. You can go visit. I've been to the house where George Washington stayed while he was the commander. It's just outside of Boston, because in Boston is the British military. It's just outside of Boston in Cambridge, which is where Harvard is located. Later, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who is a great writer, will own that house and write all kinds of stories there in the 1800s. But in the early 1775, he is going to be heading up there, but not in time for this battle. He won't get there quite yet for this particular battle. There will be a battle, another battle, between the British and the militia from the Massachusetts area, and I think they'll even get some other, like maybe some Rhode Island or Connecticut soldiers and so forth, because they're going to be coming from various different parts, joining the Continental Army, and there's going to be another big battle. This is the Battle of Bunker Hill and Breed's Hill. I'll tell you about this. June 17, 1775. This is just outside of Boston. In fact, it's across the water, across the Charles River, and the colonists, the Continental Army. Can we call them that now? Are we called the United States yet? Have we declared independence yet? No, we got an army first. And we're still trying to talk to the British, go, could you get rid of the taxes and remove your army? Because we're still loyal. We're still trying to send those petitions. And Britain's going to be like, really? You're loyal? You got an army. And that army is going to get into a fight with the British. The United States, the Continental Army of the United Colonies, where are they going to be in anticipation? They are setting up guns, looking down on Boston to fire at ships and so forth. If you're the British, do you want to have like a bunch of cannons, some artillery pieces, aiming down at the British troops? No, so what do? They're like, we're going to get you out of there. The colonists have the high ground. Hence, Bunker Hill and Breed's Hill. The British are lacking any real respect for the colonists. They're like, these guys don't know how to fire. We saw them in the French and Indian War. They're undisciplined. Both of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're both kind of like right next to each other. We got the Massachusetts soldiers up there, and the British are like, we're going to come in. We're going to come in formation. They land on the shore, and they look up to the hill, and they just start marching up. Boom, boom, marching up in formation, well-trained, well-disciplined. Okay? Are the colonists going to shoot at them? Heck yeah. I mean, hello. There's war. When are they going to shoot at them? When do you, as they're moving up, steady in formation, rank upon rank, moving up the hill, you're in defense, you've got your gun, you're pointing down, when do you fire? When they're close enough. Don't wait till they're too close, because then you might have missed your opportunity. In fact, sometimes they would say, like, wait until you can see the whites of their eyes. I can see the whites of your eyes. There we go. Let her loose. The first wave of British assaults, write this down, failed. They pulled back. But then they came again and again. 2,000 British soldiers ultimately moving up the hill. They took heavy casualties. In fact, by the time the battle is over, the British, about a third of the British soldiers, so that would be, what, about 600 or so? Am I doing the math right there? A third of the British soldiers had been either shot and injured or shot and killed. You got that? And yet the colonists, I guess you could say they lost. Why would they not continue firing off their weapons as the British kept coming and coming? Eventually, they ran out of ammunition. If you run out of ammunition, you're like, I could like fight in bayonet and so forth, but I don't know. That's a lot of British soldiers. So they pulled back. So was it a victory for our side? Not necessarily. I mean, we gave the British a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, but the British would be like, okay, we cleared them off of here. Are the colonists going to surrender? I don't think so. Okay? I don't think so. By the time Washington comes up shortly after this battle, he looks around and he's like, okay, you guys put up a pretty good fight, but you are lacking discipline, you are lacking professionalism. It's going to be very, very hard for Washington to get his troops to form up into any real semblance of an effective army. And in fact, in some of these fights, it's going to be bad. I mean, there's going to be some really bad fights in which Washington's army is almost going to be entirely blown away. Very, very difficult. It's not clear that the Massachusetts approach of going to war is the way to do it. You understand that? And in fact, there's some in the Second Continental Army, the Second Continental Congress back here, that are like, okay, we've got Washington and so forth, but really, maybe we should just be careful. Write it down. Olive branch petition. Do you see that in there? Olive branch petition. What the heck is an olive branch besides something on an olive tree that has like little olives that grow off of it? What do you suppose that expression means? When I offer you an olive branch, yeah. It's a symbol of peace. Yeah, it's like Yeah, you got a guy on a ship that's been out there for a long time, and here they come back with an olive branch, okay? The bird comes back with an olive branch. The olive branch petition is sent Mr. Dickinson, John Dickinson, write this down. John Dickinson recommends, and the Second Continental Congress agrees. Let's try one more time with this petition thing. The Second Continental Congress agrees that they're going to send a petition to the king, okay? And this is July 5th, 1775. Olive branch petition. Kind of easy to remember because given another year, and the document that's going to come out of you guys, the Second Continental Congress, is not going to be no more petition anymore. It's going to be a Declaration of Independence. And here's what it says. We're loyal. We don't want to fight. We want you to take the army away. We want everything to come around and work out very well for us. Do you understand that? Folks like John Adams are like, we've already started war up here. Enough of these stupid petitions. They're not working. By the way, did George III, the British king, and the British Parliament, did they go, oh yeah, let's just sort of like calm things down a little bit? No. They're like, stupid petition. The heck with this. Send the Navy in. Send more soldiers in. These are brat children, and they need to be disciplined. Oh my gosh. Who do you guys think you are? Well, we're going to be. Yeah, America. And who is like, what do you need at this point? Is you need somebody to just sit down and look at the whole situation who's got really good writing skills and can just sort of like sum it all up in a way that can get to all the people or a lot of the people and go, we're at a point now where we need to use a bit of our common sense. I love this one. Write it down. Thomas Paine, he writes a pamphlet. It's like a little book. And he has it printed, and in order, authors, I'm not counting on this, but authors back in those days, they needed to make some money. And he did make money. He printed this pamphlet. It became the best-selling pamphlet in the colonies. It was reproduced and printed and sold throughout the colonies. Common sense. I'll tell you what's in it here in a bit, and I'll tell you a little bit about Thomas Paine. And he's pretty cool because he takes a bunch of the money that he gets from selling his pamphlet and gives it to George Washington and the Continental Army, which was always short of money trying to do their job. Here's the deal. Thomas Paine, he'd barely been in the colonies. He was British. And he got tired of the British. He got tired of the nobility, and he got tired of this, and he's like, man, you guys suck. He came over to the American colonies just in time for what became the American Revolution. And he looked at the situation, and he's like, this is ridiculous. Here was one of the arguments he said. He was like summing up all the things that we've seen before. The British are treating you like children. The British are taking away your rights. The British are not respecting you. The British are putting taxes on you without having any representation come in. The British are violating you all the time. It doesn't make sense, he said, write this down, that a island, Britain, should rule over a continent. And you're not just a little baby colonies. Some of your colonies had been around for well in excess of 150 years. You've established yourselves. He says it only makes common sense for the American people to rise up and participate in creating your own country. He's very persuasive. You guys have all kinds of discussions and so forth in Philadelphia, but I tell you what, this guy's words on paper resonated especially with, get this, common people, poor people, but not poor as in wretched poor and they're begging for handouts, but just like average common farmers and so forth in the colonies. Got that? This is a big deal. Thomas Paine, a writer, played a very critical role in how the story is played out. Meanwhile, Britain looks, besides Boston, there is another colony that is very prosperous. Raise your hand if you think your colony has, and perhaps even today, one of the most, if not the most, prosperous, wealthy trade cities. You got your hand up? That was like, are you sure? Are you going to make an argument that who's your colony? You think you're New York? He thinks he's New York. You are New York. Do you think New York is a big deal? To some, okay, to New Yorkers. What have you got going in New York? Is there a lot of trade going in and out of New York? Is there today? Yeah, it's like a financial capital. Write that down. The British eye New York. The British are looking over at New York, and they are going to invade New York. Oh my gosh. They're going to invade New York. They're going to send over, oh my gosh, how many people did they send over? They send over, ultimately, let me see, 30,000 troops, 10,000 sailors, 30 battleships, 1,200 cannon. Am I going too fast? Okay. This is what the British are going to send over to New York. And New York's going to be like, oh my gosh, this is bad. 300 supply ships. Okay? 10,000 sailors. Okay? Did I say the 330 battleships? Excuse me. 1,200 cannons. So like on your ships you got cannon pointing and so forth. This is a major army. They're going to send it over to New York. All right? George Washington. Yes. Yeah, I'll do those again. Ready? 30,000 troops. Okay, 30,000 soldiers. So this is not just like 2,000. This is like 30,000 British soldiers. 10,000 sailors. So we're going to have the sailors on the boats and so forth. You got to have the sailors on the boats. 30 of the ships are battleships. So they got big guns. And if you add up all the guns that are pointing out of the various different ships, 1,200 of them. Okay? And then you've got 300 supply ships. This is a big British army to New York. Washington, what are you going to do now that all these guys are coming your way? Go to New York. He brings his army over to New York. Like they're going to fight a battle in New York. Washington's army against the British. There will be a battle. It'll take place in July. This is 1776. Oh my gosh, this is 1776. This is the critical year. What is going on? As the people are getting ready for this big, huge, massive battle that could be decisive, that could end the war, that could end the independence of the United States of America even before it's even got started. What is the thing? How have the British responded to your petition, the Olive Branch petition that you guys sent out in 1775? They didn't. Have they pulled their troops back? Nope. So what are you going to do? Massachusetts, what do you insist that the Second Continental Congress do as you're going into the summer of 1776? What? Declare independence? Who? Raise your hand if you've discovered this already. You might not have. Who is the biggest colony? All right. Who is the oldest colony? Virginia is also the biggest colony. Write this down. Virginia is the biggest colony. They're also the oldest colony. So, does it make sense for Massachusetts to be the one who resolves and puts the argument forward for independence? Yeah, you guys have been going for this and going and going and going. But who, on behalf of Virginia, is going to make a resolution saying, we want independence? You got two choices. It's not going to be Thomas Jefferson. You're going to write the document. Richard Henry Lee. Write it down. Richard Henry Lee. Woohoo! That's you. You're going to be the one that makes a resolution to the Second Continental Congress that these colonies now declare themselves states, 13 individual states, and the resolution is for Declaration of Independence. Independence, independence, independence. Now they do delay a little while a committee is set up to come up with the reasons why they're doing the declaration. Everyone's like, we know what the reasons are. Well, let's put them in writing. So they put them in writing, and they draft a document called the Declaration of Independence. Who's on that committee? Raise your hand if you know you're on the committee. There's a committee of 5. It's an easy one. You know that. Thomas Jefferson is on the committee of 5. He's going to give most of the responsibility for writing because he was educated at William and Mary, and sometimes they produce good writers. And they did in this instance. Raise your hand if you think you're also on that committee that drafts the Declaration of Independence. John Adams is on that committee. Write that down. John Adams is on that committee from Massachusetts, right? So part of the delegation where things are hot and heavy in the fighting already. Who else is on the committee? Who is a great writer and a great scientist and has lots of international reputation? Benjamin Franklin, very good. So we got 3, the big 3. Who else is going to be on that committee? Who do you think? Nope, George Washington is off fighting the British. Nope, not James Madison. Sorry, I don't even think he's there. It's going to be somebody from Connecticut. Raise your hand if you're from Connecticut. Seriously? You don't know if you're from Connecticut? Let's find out who's from Connecticut. Okay, we got a choice. Roger Sherman. Raise your hand if you're Roger Sherman. Raise your hand if you are Oliver Wolcott. Who's on the committee? You are. Roger Sherman. Write that down. Roger Sherman is on the committee. Okay? He's a cobbler, so he's like a craftsman and so forth from Connecticut. Okay? And they're going to have somebody also from New York. Raise your hand if you're from New York. You're from New York. We got 2 choices. New York. Who is going to be on the committee that is going to help with the Declaration of Independence? Is it going to be, raise your hand if you're Lewis Morris. Raise your hand if you're Robert Livingston. Who's it going to be? It's going to be Livingston. Very good. It's going to be Robert Livingston. You can see if you're following along in the thing, because we've got all the names there. So those 5 are going to be in it. And it's kind of like nose goes. Literally, I'll play it for you next time. There's a lovely musical that goes through as to nose goes. Who is going to do the Declaration of Independence? It's really sweet. And it's going to be Jefferson. He's going to be the one who writes it. Okay? Now here is and of course it's very well written, but write this down. Jefferson wrote the first draft of the Declaration of Independence. It gets submitted to you guys. And what do you guys do with it? You debate it. You change it. You alter it. You amend it. You tweak it. And when all the tweaks and the amendments and so forth are done, you vote on it. And this is the tricky part. When you vote on it, you have already agreed, and this is a tough one. You look at the situation and say, if we are going to declare independence against Britain, we're going to be a fight against Britain. Make this note. Are they going to need help? Oh, trust me, they're going to need help. And they're going to send Franklin, and they're going to send, whoever to try and get, I don't know what country could possibly be like a really big help fighting against the British. France, write that down. They're going to be trying to get France, and Benjamin Franklin's going to be the key person in France trying to get the French to help us out. Are they going to help us out right away because they can't stand the British? No. They're going to want to know if we're going to actually be able to pull this off. Because if we can't pull it off, they don't want, they don't want to get into another big expensive fight against the British that they're going to lose. If they're going to team up with us, they want to know that we're going to be able to pull this off. Will they eventually join us? Yes. Will they make the difference? Yes. Will we win? Yes. The United States and France are 2 countries that have never gone to war with each other. We get into fights with the French all the time. I suppose if you say the French and Indian War, well, that was when we were colonists, with the British and so forth. But we were on the same side eventually. But here's the deal. Make sure you understand this and make sure you write this down. The colonists themselves looked and said, it's going to be hard to beat the British. And there were people in the colonies who didn't want to fight. They were loyal. They will be referred to as Tories. A Tory, T-O-R-Y, is someone who is loyal to Britain. And there's going to be Tories who will take guns and they will fight on behalf of Britain during this American Revolution. T-O-R-I-E-S is Tories. So what the colonists, members, you guys decide, before you vote for independence, you agree. It makes it harder. You agree if there is going to be a vote for independence, it has to be How many of the 13 colonies in agreement? 2/3? That's a lot, but it's higher. 3/4 is even higher than 2/3, but it's higher. Did you say everyone? Are you trying to get my attention? Everyone? Is that you, Ty? Oh, that's you. Okay, I'm like trying to like echolocate and so forth. Everyone here. Ty, do you agree? Everyone should do. Does not make it harder because if one of your states is like, now, we vote now, then there's no Declaration of Independence. But write that down. They agreed. It had to be all of the colonies, or at least no colony voting against the resolution. And it got really picky, got really close for a while there with Pennsylvania. John Dickinson, you're pretty cool there, and you're like trying to like get Britain to kind of go along and so forth with everything, but you're like, maybe just one more petition. I mean, maybe we can bring them over. Just got to talk to them a little bit more. And John Adams and some of the others are like, oh my gosh, we've had enough of this already. They resolve it's going to be unanimous. And so when the vote finally comes in, each state, big or small, only gets one vote. And so you basically have a vote within your delegation, majority rules within the delegation. When the vote finally was taken on July 2nd, 1776, all of the states voted, except for one. New York was waiting to like get an official word from their delegation and so forth, or their legislature back in New York, and so they abstained. But they didn't vote against it. All of the states voted for it. And they adopted the Declaration of Independence, and that will be published 2 days later for the world to see, July 4th, 1776. Okay? That's good. Actually, yeah. Covered all that. Is that good? Should we do the video in class? Or do you want to have the notes, some more notes on that, or some other kinds of things? I'll take a look at it. Because I know you guys got a lot to do between now and 48 hours later in class. Yeah. Oh, he was like, oh yeah. He was very much. So after you've wiped down your desk, you guys are free to go. Have an awesome day. Bring in some great reports with Works Cited. Okay. Good, thank you.